Next up are two more incredible women leading the charge to ensure that teachers and students are supported, seen, and safe in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. If the overlapping traumas of this past year have shown us anything, it's that student well-being is just as important as academic learning. The resilience displayed by students and educators this year was nothing short of remarkable in the face of the great challenges. And building on that resilience and ensuring that children feel seen, known, supported, and safe are key to charting a successful year ahead. In this session, Dr. Priscilla Chan, co-founder and co-CEO of the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, will join Vanessa Rodriguez, interim CEO for Citizens of the World Charter Schools, to discuss how schools can apply findings from the science of relationships to meet the needs of both educators and students alike, better support student well-being, and accelerate learning. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Priscilla Chan, who, in addition to being a co-founder and co-CEO at CZI, is a pediatrician and teacher who has worked with parents and students across the Bay Area. And this experience has informed CZI's focus on accelerating progress in education, finding new paths to manage and cure disease, and expanding opportunities for more people. She is also the founder of the primary school, which integrates health and education and serves children and families in East Palo Alto and the Belle Haven neighborhood in Menlo Park, California, and Haywood, California as well. Priscilla earned her BA in biology at Harvard University and her MD at the University of California in San Francisco, UCSF. She completed her pediatrics training in the UCSF Plus Pediatrics residency. Dr. Chan is joined by Vanessa Rodriguez, who began her career in education as a bilingual elementary school teacher in the Bronx. She joined Citizens of the World Charter Schools as Chief Program Officer in 2016, after serving as the Chief Talent Officer at Newark Public Schools. 3 cheers up for Newark. Previously, Vanessa was the Chief Executive Officer of District 2079, Alternative Schools and Programs, a unique citywide network serving disengaged, overage, undercredited students within the New York City Department of Education. And prior to her time at District 79, Vanessa was the National Director of Recruitment and Admissions for New Leaders and worked in various capacities for Teach for America. Vanessa is currently the interim Chief Executive Officer at Citizens of the World Charter Schools, as well as the proud mom to her 14-year-old son. Please join me in welcoming to your screen Dr. Priscilla Chan and Vanessa Rodriguez.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you so much.
Hi, good morning, Priscilla. It's really good to be in this conversation with you today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Hello, good morning.
So let's dive right in. The theme of this year's National Charter School Conference is Reimagining Education. To start off, can you share with us your long-term vision for reimagining education?
Yeah, I'd love to. But first of all, I'd like to say it's an honor to be able to share some of my thoughts with so many of people who, including you, Vanessa, who are on the front lines of making a difference in so many students' lives. And so thank you to the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools for bringing this incredible group together every year, but especially this year for the work that is going to benefit millions of students. And to you, Vanessa, for your leadership at the Citizens of the World Charter Schools. We've been following your work at CZI for a long time, and it's amazing to see your success in applying the whole child approach. So each one of you in the audience today, you're doing incredible work, and thank you for doing it. For your question, Vanessa, at the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, we believe that every educator listening today, we believe in the same thing. Teaching and learning don't happen in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. There are so many factors that go into ensuring that a child can reach their full potential. as someone who started their career as a teacher and then became a pediatrician and now back in education, when I see a child struggling, I don't think about what's wrong with the child. I think, what do they need? What else can we do to help them be prepared for this moment in the classroom to be able to be successful? For some kids, like, I think, do they have an adult mentor that believes in them? Or do they feel like they're walking into a classroom that where they're alone? Or there's a lot of, around, like, when a kid is not paying attention, are they tired? I've been with students that are homeless and they simply don't have a place to sleep at night. So they are grouchy in the morning, and you and I would be too. So, like, how can we support them to be able to be well rested enough to be successful in the morning, in the afternoon? I've one of the first little kids that came into my life in this way in education. I was the after school teacher, and a truancy officer came and visited me and said, this kid isn't coming to school. And, my first reaction that early in my career was honestly, why is she avoiding school? Like, she needs to be engaged. So many people care about her. But then when I found her in the play yard, in the community that she lived in, she wasn't safe. Someone had hurt her and she had broken her 2 front teeth. And so that's why she wasn't showing up in the classroom. Not because she doesn't want to learn. It's because so much has been going on that made it hard for her to show up and succeed in the classroom. So that's the core. Like, what are the relationships? Who are the people in the classroom? Who are the people outside of the classroom that need to be networked together, need to be talking, need to be plugged into a student's life for them to be successful? We call that the whole child approach. Many others may call it different things, but it's really like, how do we share a parent's vision for helping their child live up to their full potential? And I want to recognize that the resources to support a whole child are impacted by the same systemic racism that has led us to have a historically unequal education system that we all work in every day. And until we name that, getting a child fed, having a child housed, is impacted by the same systematically racist systems, we can't, it's hard to serve the needs of the whole child. And I know we'll get to this later, but all those things were highlighted for each one of us in the past year in the context of the pandemic. And so that's what we want to do. We want to think about how to empower educators to work against, how to build a new system together to provide students with differentiated learning experiences that support their academic achievement through also acknowledging their well-being. So at CZI, we build tools like Along and the Summit Learning Platform to help make sure teachers can actually connect with their students and build those stronger relationships over time. Providing grant supports to make sure that we're bringing the latest in the science of human development into the classroom. And by ensuring that we're building a bipartisan coalition of families, educators, researchers, advocates, and communities to build that more equitable education system that supports the whole child. So right now, we're really doubling down on how do we help schools and educators create those meaningful, intentional connections that ensure that our Black, Brown, and Indigenous students feel seen for fully who they are, their racial, cultural identities, all of the bits that make them unique for who they are. We want to make sure that that's in the forefront so that we can bring all the students back into the fold to resume and strengthen their academic trajectory.
all of that resonates. And I'd like to pick up on that thread about the pandemic. We've heard a lot about this debate over those who want to prioritize academic recovery on one side and those who prioritize students' well-being on the other. What's your question?
I think this is a false dichotomy that we either have to focus on unfinished learning or student well-being. We have to tackle both because they're deeply related. We have to recognize that we're sort of like the amount of pressure on students and on the school setting is unprecedented. This is an unprecedented moment, and we need to be creative. We need to take a fresh lens on how to address some of these issues. So I think, first of all, we have to take a step back and think about the magnitude of and the number of traumas that our students have faced, interruptions in their day-to-day work, at school, for their parents, in their home lives, an incredible amount of economic insecurity during this time, and the actual loss of life, loss of friends and loved ones. And I want to acknowledge that this isn't just for our students, our teachers, school leaders. We've all been, each one of us have been carrying around some of those same burdens, while oftentimes needing to put it aside to make sure that we're serving our students. And so when we return in the fall, we need to make sure that we're naming and seeing and relieving some of the weight that students and teachers are carrying back into the classroom with them. So when we take that trauma-informed practice for staff and students, we need to foster trust through relationship. How do we build back consistency, predictability, a sense of control, agency, and choice? Because we have been living, to keep ourselves safe, we've been living in a state of isolation and fear. So we need to refocus on safety, connection, trust. So that's why I think it's a false choice to say that it's one or the other. How do you get a kid to learn about math when they're worried about their physical safety? They're worried about someone at home. They're grieving the loss of someone. So I think this is a moment that highlights the research that we've known is true, that learning can only happen when students are emotionally and physically safe. So don't ask a student to choose between air and water. You need both to survive. And the fact of the matter is, if I put my doctor or physician lens, scientist lens on, when students are under stress, cortisol levels rise. And when that cortisol levels are high, their amygdala is affected, their hippocampus is affected. That means that their working memory is limited. Their ability to, whatever you're doing to try to tell them about a lesson isn't registering. So let's get kids' brains ready to actually absorb information, resume their growth. But like, I don't think that we're going in with a totally blank slate,
right?
Because I think a lot of people have built up resilience. I think we've seen communities, school communities, religious communities, students helping each other over the course of this year. And so we just have to tap into that. And figure out how to make sure that students know that it's safe. It's safe to explore this recovery here.
That deeply resonates, and I'm sure that for a lot of the teachers and educators who are on with us today, they're probably nodding along as well, along with your message of supporting both academic achievement and well-being. However, I know that many are probably also thinking and wondering, how do they do this in the face of the current supports that they have, right? The funding hasn't all come in yet in terms of COVID relief. So how do they do that with the limited resources they currently have in preparation for this fall? And then also, while managing calls around accountability on grades. And what is your recommendation? What are your thoughts for teachers specifically as they face going into the summer and preparing for the fall?
Yeah. This is, teachers are going to be at the center of how the return to the classroom goes. That's, they're just the keystone. And I'm grateful for that. And I want us to be sober about the tremendous amount of pressure that teachers have been under. Pre-pandemic, the American Federation of Teachers reported that 2/3 of educators felt stressed out. That's already double the rate of stress felt by workers in the overall population. And the pandemic has only made that worse. During this year, the Educators for Excellence surveyed and found that 80% of their teachers are concerned about their own health, their students and themselves, and their families. And so we need to make sure, as the people surrounding teachers, school leaders, all of us in the ecosystem, that we're actually figuring out how to better meet the needs of teachers. One example that I'm going to point back to you, Vanessa, is the incredible work that you are doing at the Citizens of the World Charter Schools. You guys are offering professional learning opportunities that are building these formal spaces to look at and support a teacher's social, emotional, cognitive, and identity development. And so the teachers have the strength of having reflected on themselves and their sense of otherness or belonging, and then being able to translate that and focus on a student's environment and how the student can anchor on that as something that is a core pillar of their identity and resilience in the classroom. And I know this staff development is ongoing, but it's a great example of how you have to look at an adult's cognitive needs and act on that in parallel to supporting a child's needs. And I'm going to say that I want to make a point that technology also has a role in supporting our teachers too. It's not a silver bullet. It can never replace the passion, knowledge, expertise, love that an educator brings to their work over the course of a lifetime, but it can be a valuable tool. Our teachers need innovative tools. They need the time and support to really connect with each one of their students. And so one of the ways that we've been doing this at the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative is working with our nonprofit partner, Gradient Learning, to build these tools with educators, with students, researchers. And one of the first tools that we're offering is called Along. It's a free digital reflection tool that's meant to help foster meaningful one-on-one conversations between teachers and students. This gives teachers an avenue to build those one-on-one relationships at a speed and cadence that is comfortable for the student, and the teachers feel like they're not doing this blindly. And getting a one-word response and not knowing where to go next. The tool sort of offers a virtual check-in where a teacher has a series of research-informed questions that are developed with the specific purpose of helping students reflect on the topics that are important to them in the moment, like managing stress or staying motivated. And then the students get a chance to share their reflections. And there's a choice: video, audio, text. I know you have a 14-year-old kid.
Me too.
Like at that age, like what is the medium in which you want to express yourself? And giving them a choice of when and how is really important to be able to see a slightly different side of them and get to learn more about them. And then the teacher can respond on their own time too. And, oftentimes, it can be hard to make sure that you've been engaging with your whole class in such a deep manner. And so in the tool, there's a whole class view where a teacher gets to make sure that they're staying on top of when they're responding and seeing if there's anyone who's, maybe falling back through the cracks a little bit. And so it's a pilot, and we're building this tool alongside people who have a lot more expertise based on their lifetimes of careers or their personal experience. Yeah. But we want to make it a tool that can help teachers feel successful, because when our teachers feel successful, our kids get to be successful too.
Absolutely. And that does resonate. I think my son would love an opportunity to engage with his teachers in that way. I'm so happy that you are driving that type of work. You also reference the equity and racial justice play a role in your approach to this work. I know at Citizens, we're constantly thinking about how do we ensure the decisions and the work we're doing are through the lens of equity and racial justice. I would love to hear, and I'm sure others here today would love to hear, if you could tell us a little bit about how you embed those two values into your work and how that plays a role in your approach in doing this work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with exactly what you just said, is acknowledging that being primed and ready to be successful in the classroom is very deeply tied to a student's race and socioeconomic status. And, this is not something that is an academic exercise or sort of I've read about. This is something that I've seen play out over and over again firsthand as a pediatrician and as a school leader at the primary school. And I mentioned the child who was homeless and too tired to be engaged in the classroom. We also at the primary school, when we look at health, we see a spike in a lack of asthma control over the winter. And, if I just wore my physician hat, I might say, well, in the winter, there are more colds. And so asthmatics get triggered. In the classroom, you might just see a lot of absences from your asthmatics. But when you take a comprehensive look at race and socioeconomics, what we learned at the primary school is that a lot of our families took on extra jobs to make money over the holidays for seasonal work as an opportunity to earn more income. And that dropped our families out of the Medi-Cal coverage. And they couldn't get their inhalers during that time. Mm-hmm. And so it's complicated. It's a net of actions that are all related. And so we need to be able to see that when a student's acting out or when a student's sick, we need to look at the root cause, not address, aggression or truancy, but as an opportunity to dig in and see how is the system meeting or not meeting their needs. It's to then be able to address the academic outcomes that we all are deeply invested in. And when we're open to looking at the lens of how all parts of a student's well-being are both related to their academic outcomes as well as deeply rooted in race and socioeconomics, we can start making progress that is lasting, not just, one better week, one better semester, but really changing the trajectory of a student's life, which is what we each want. And we partner with schools that are leading on being able to serve these needs. I want to acknowledge the Fuji's Academy that's based there. They have schools in Georgia and Ohio. They serve first or second generation refugees, and they work with them to and their families to connect on healthcare, nutrition, English learning, the resources that they need, and directly in the classroom, translating that into a focus on identity and culture, so that kids feel strong, resilient, ready to learn in the classroom. And, you know, that sense of belonging, again, is just so core to being able to succeed. And when I say long lasting, this is backed by research. Students with mentors, students that have a sense of belonging and connection, are 55% more likely to enroll in college, 130% more likely to hold a leadership position than students without mentors. That's huge. And all of those are building blocks that allow a kid to feel like they've achieved, and in the face of resilience, they have something to lean on, and they have an internal strength that belongs to them.
Absolutely. Firming identities is crucial to this work. It resonates deeply. Dr. Chan, thank you so much for being our keynote today. And as we begin to wrap up this conversation and we're looking ahead to this fall, do you have any final comments for our charter school leaders? Any final thoughts for them as they prepare for this fall?
I know this fall is going to be so overwhelming. But the time to really imagine our education system, the time to think differently. I heard the terms revolutionize. The time is now, because the cracks and pain points in our education system that we've all lived for many years, it was so painful in the past year. And our job is to make sure that we don't just walk away from that to pretend it didn't happen. We need to think about how we leverage the incredible opportunity and resources that we have in this year and the coming years to actually reshape the school experience so that we're actually prioritizing the needs of the whole child. And that when we prioritize those needs, especially when we're welcoming students back into the fold, it's about relationships. And when we incorporate technology, it's about fostering a deeper connection, seeing different facets of a student. And that's going to serve us tremendously in the next year, but also really shift the orientation, put a new lens on the way that we see kids, in a way that we've all been yearning for so long, but really hopefully have the resources and momentum to actually build in a lasting way. So thank you. I think there's a lot on the shoulders of each one of you, and I'm so incredibly grateful both for your work and the opportunity for you guys to all come together at this conference to just reflect on what's happened and what needs to happen next. So hopefully this is an opportunity for rest and re-energizing that will get us prepared for the next year. So thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
We're so grateful for the work that you're leading, so grateful for really focusing your work around equity and also ensuring that students' identities are at the forefront, but also the balance of that with also the need to really support educators and putting that at the forefront, that healing, especially after this year, needs to happen not just in pockets, but across the board. And so really grateful for the work you're driving, and for all of you out there as well. We're very happy that you were able to join us today in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.